So welcome to the Applying for Your New Student Visa webinar for new students. So before we get started, I just want to welcome you. I'm Erin Skelly. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Services here at Berkeley International Office. And I will be presenting this webinar. So first stop, just making sure you're in the right place. So you should be attending this webinar if you are a new student to UC Berkeley. And you're coming here on a student visa for fall 2022. And you're coming here on a student visa that is going to be sponsored by UC Berkeley. That means you're receiving an I-20 or DS 2019 document from us, and you're going to use that to apply for a visa or to apply for entry to the US to study here at UC Berkeley. There might be, occasionally we have students who are sponsored by a third party like Fulbright, and you might have documents from a different sponsor. If you're sponsored by Fulbright or you're going to a different school, this may not be the right webinar for you. So I just wanted to double check. Or if you're in a visa category that isn't a student visa, this is just for folks who are going to be applying for an F1 or J1 visa or F1 J1 status for entry. Okay, so with that aside, I'm going to get started. What I'd like to ask of all of you is to maybe hold your questions until we pause for some questions. We're going to cover a lot of information in the webinar, and sometimes the questions get answered as we're going along. So maybe hold for questions, and I'll take some pauses as we go along, and then feel free to pop your questions into the chat. And I'll take a look at your questions in the chat, and then I'll answer them. All right, so here we go. All right, so first step, let's see. Oh, there seems to be, sorry, I'm jumping around. So I wanted to start first with fall 2020 enrollment requirements. So this is just a reminder to everybody. If you are a new student, and that means you're entering the US for the first time on a new F1 or J1 visa record that was issued after March 9th, 2020, which was a long time ago. So all of you are entering on new records. You're not allowed to be enrolled fully online. That's just not permitted by the current visa guidelines. So just know that you have to have, you will always need to be enrolled full-time while you're a student at UC Berkeley, but for right now, you have to have at least one course with in-person instruction. So you can't be fully remote because you're not allowed to do that according to your visa status. That shouldn't be a problem because basically most of the instruction right now is in person. So it's actually pretty difficult to have a fully remote schedule. So just keep that in mind as you're signing up for classes. You can search for classes using the Berkeley Academic Guide, and this allows you to filter for the mode of instruction. A class is 100% online if the instructional mode is listed as online or web-based. The class is considered in-person if it's coded with an in-person instructional mode. So if you're someone who is not planning to enroll in any in-person courses, we need to cancel your current I-20 or DS 2019, and you'll need to plan to participate from outside the US, or add some in-person instruction to your schedule, and we can keep your F1 or J1 visa record active. So next steps, we're getting some questions about late arrivals. So I just wanted to let you know a few options. We are happy to work with students who are facing arrival difficulties for fall 2020, and that could include late arrivals, readmits, people that are returning after withdrawal or deferral, and we'll make sure that you get documents updated as needed. So what do you do if you're going to be arriving after the start of instruction for fall 2022? First step is you need to contact your academic department to see what academic options are available for you. We don't determine if that's okay academically. So first you're going to have to see, is it even okay for you to arrive late? And what's possible with your academic department? If your academic department approves you to arrive late, then you need to contact our office, and we'll work with you to see what needs to be taken care of in terms of what your plans are academically. Sometimes there's a few different options. It may mean that we need to adjust your I-20 or DS 2019 to a later start date if you're arriving fairly, a few weeks into the semester, or you might be working with your department or the Office of Admissions to defer to an entirely different semester. That means you move your admission to a future semester. Or in some cases, students might choose to withdraw or cancel. If you do that, you need to contact our office before you withdraw or cancel. And also take a look at the registrar's cancellation or withdrawal information, because when you withdraw, definitely impacts your admission. It may impact tuition and fees that are assessed, and there's different deadlines. So just keeping in mind, there's some differences between arriving late and maybe not coming at all. So if any of these things are going on, first check in academically and see what your options are, and then contact our office and let us know what your plans are, and we can work with you on any adjustments that need to be made. Okay, so to start out, what type of visa do you need? So if you're coming here to study as a student, you're coming on a non-immigrant visa. And that is a visa status that is sponsored by your school. And there's two primary student visa categories. There's the F1 and the J1. And both of them allow you to remain in the US for the duration of your status. They each have different types of employment benefits. And on our website, if you're not sure which one is right for you, we have a website that compares both of the visa categories so you can determine which one is more appropriate. Most students are on an F1 visa. Some students are on a J1, which is an exchange visitor visa. You might be on an exchange program as a J1, or you might have government funding. The J1 has really specific requirements. So for most people, you're likely to be on an F1, but some of you will be on a J1. There's a few other visa categories that allow study, like dependent visas like H4, J2, E2, TD. But just so that you know, certain visa categories don't allow full-time study, and that's B1, B2, ESTA, and F2. F2 prohibits full-time study, but B1 and B2 and ESTA, those are all tourist visa categories. You're not allowed to study in a degree program at all. So if you're currently in the US on one of those categories, you're going to need to leave and change to student before you can study full-time. Okay, so moving on, what I'm going to get into now is the actual application process to request your documents from our office, and then to apply at an embassy abroad for a visa if a visa is required for you. And finally, what you need to do to enter the US. So new students or readmitted students, if you are returning to Berkeley after a break, you need to submit the non-immigrant information form. You should see a task item in your CalCentral for the NIF, that's what we call it. If you click that task, it'll take you to the NIF and you have to complete that. That will trigger our office to issue you an I-20 or DS 2019, which is a certificate of eligibility to go and apply for student visa status. Once you get that I-20 or DS 2019, you can pay the SEVIS fee, which is a government fee. We'll talk about it. Then, if you're applying for a visa, you're not Canadian, you will submit an online visa application called the Form DS-160 and pay a visa application fee. That's separate from the SEVIS fee. Then you're likely to schedule a visa interview or appointment, attend the visa interview, and then, if you're successful, receive the passport back with your visa. So let's get started on each of these steps. Okay, so first step is submitting the NIF. So the NIF is your first request to us to request your I-20 or DS 2019. I-20s are for F1s, DS 2019s are for J1s. The NIF processing time is 10 to 15 business days. For F1s, we will email your I-20 to you when it's completed. J1s, unfortunately, the Department of State that manages J1s doesn't allow us to email them. We can send these to you by express mail, and you'll arrange for express mail as part of your NIF. Visa application fees, forms, and appointment scheduling, those can all be done online. And wait times for visa appointments and processing vary by location. So if you haven't started this process, you need to get started immediately. We're getting close to classes. You can consult your local consulate to see the current wait times. Okay, so first step, you submit your NIF, and your NIF is going to ask questions about you. We'll get a copy of your passport and information, and then we'll issue you one of these documents, and you can see it here, the F1 I-20 and the J1 DS 2019. This is a certificate of eligibility that allows you to apply for an F1 or J1 visa at an embassy or consulate abroad and to enter the US. It contains details about you, your school, and your program of study. To request it, you complete the NIF, and then we'll email you an I-20, or J1 will mail it to you via express mail. Information that you need on it, there are program dates on it, and you'll notice you have a SEVIS ID number. You need that SEVIS ID number when you're taking the next step of paying the SEVIS fee. And the SEVIS ID, you can also find that in the NIF after we've issued your documents. The NIF will populate and indicate to you your SEVIS ID number, so you can actually pay the SEVIS fee before you receive the document. So the SEVIS fee, this is a fee from the US government for the creation of the F1 or J1 electronic record. There's a system, a database called SEVIS, the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. Once you are issued an I-20 or DS 2019, you're required by the government to pay this SEVIS fee, and that goes to the government for the upkeep of this electronic system. You can pay that fee online at fmjfee.com. These are all visa types, the F visa, the M, which is not a visa at UC Berkeley, and the J. So it's fmjfee.com, and you will submit your payment there and then print your receipt. Okay, so I'm going to pause right now and say, for my Canadian friends, if we have any Canadian citizens here, you can take a break for a little while. For you, once you've received your I-20 or DS 2019 and you've paid the SEVIS fee, you don't need to apply for a visa. Canadians don't require a visa sticker from the consulate to cross the border, but all other rules apply to you. So if you're Canadian, you can ignore the next steps about applying for a visa, but please tune in for arrival information because that's important for you. But everybody else that isn't Canadian, and by Canadian, I mean you're a Canadian citizen and passport holder, and that citizenship is listed on your I-20 or DS 2019. But everybody else, you have to proceed to applying for a visa. So first, you're going to find the embassy or consulate near you, and you can go to www.usembassy.gov. Check your local embassy or consulate's website for specific visa application instructions. You want instructions to apply for a non-immigrant visa. The US Embassy website may link you to a third-party website for visa application instructions, but make sure you go directly from that embassy or consulate website. Don't just Google stuff. Go to usembassy.gov, search for the embassy or consulate from there, and then only link from that page. There's some scammers out there, so be careful. Always go from a legitimate site first. What you will do is complete the form DS-160. This is an online visa application form for all non-immigrant visas. You select your embassy location first, and then you will print the confirmation page with a barcode when it's complete. So you can see a little picture here. There's a barcode. It'll have your information. We often get a few questions about the DS-160, and while we can't help you with every question, we can tell you a few things. US point of contact. You can use the contact information for Berkeley International Office, which is on our website. or you could use a family member or a friend in the US. It will also ask you the address where you will stay. It's okay if you don't know where you're going to live, but you do need to provide an address where you may stay when you first arrive. That could be a friend's house, that could be the hotel that you plan to stay at. You do need to put something. Don't write our office address because you're not going to be sleeping at our office. You'll upload your photo while you complete the online form, and there's specific photo guidelines that your photo has to meet for a US visa. So make sure that you meet the photo guidelines. Then you'll pay the visa application fee. It's sometimes called the MRV or NIV application fee. This is separate from the SEVIS fee, totally different things. SEVIS fee and visa are totally different things. And you can see the Department of State website for current fees. And don't forget to print your receipt. So next, you'll schedule a visa interview and appointment, and you'll follow instructions given by the US Embassy or Consulate where you intend to apply. Don't wait to schedule. Wait times for appointments can be really long during summer months, so schedule as soon as possible. Right now, if you are still waiting for a visa appointment, you may need to look into requesting an expedite or emergency visa if it's within 30 days of your arrival date. The US State Department does try to prioritize student visas, and it is possible to ask for expedites or emergency visas. You may need to look into what the requirements are for that if it's looking like you're not able to obtain an interview in time for your arrival. So please do look into that. We are not able to speed your visa application. Please understand that we don't have that type of power at all these embassies and consulates in the world, but there are procedures that you can try to follow to see if you can request an expedite because you need to be here for the start of classes. So once you've scheduled your interview, you're going to check the embassy website for a complete list of documents required for that interview. This is what you should bring along with anything else they ask for: passport, your I-20 or DS-2019 issued by UC Berkeley, your acceptance letter or proof of enrollment. If you're a continuing or readmitted student, you'd want your proof of readmission, proof of financial support, financial statements, award letters. Generally, you want an official letter, not if you have funding from your department, you might have provided a form to our office, a guarantee of financial support for getting your I-20. I would recommend that you actually have a letter from your department that states the amount of your award. Financial statements should be within the last 6 months, and generally what you're providing should match what you provided on the I-20. You want your SEVIS fee receipt and the DS-160 visa application confirmation page. So you've got your documents, then the interview. So be aware that security at the embassy or consulate, you may be prohibited to bring certain items inside the building. So check what the security clearances are. You'll wait for your number to be called. And then usually you're at a window or a kiosk, and many students are really shocked. It's really fast. It's a brief interview. It's only a few minutes. So basically what the interviewer is interested in is, number one, your studies. What are you coming here to do? What are you studying? They're interested in your non-immigrant intent. This is a non-immigrant visa, and that means you are not intending to stay in the US forever. You're coming here for a purpose, and then you'll be leaving and returning home after you've completed that purpose, which is study and maybe practical training to practice what you learned. But you're not here to stay forever and to become an immigrant. That you have financial ability to pay for your studies and support yourself while you're in the US without working illegally. Remember that your student visa comes with lots of rules and restrictions for employment, and you are expected to abide by those rules. So they need to see that you have enough support already in order to carry you through the end of your degree program. And finally, language ability. For our Berkeley students, this doesn't tend to be an issue. Your language ability is high enough that you got into Berkeley and you're coming here to study. But you should be able to express yourself clearly and address all of these different areas. Why are you coming? What are you studying? What are your plans? What are your plans for the future? What is your financial status and how will you pay for your studies? So you need to be able to address those questions when asked. So answer the questions clearly and honestly. Be concise. You don't need to spill your whole life story. Answer exactly what's asked of you. Also be aware that the consulate may also conduct a social media review. So be smart about what information you post online. So this might be a moment to take a look at what you've put out there on the World Wide Web and think about what information that you want public and what you might not want as public. If you get asked a question during the interview and you don't understand, don't be afraid to ask to clarify or to repeat the question. It's much better for you to understand a question before you answer it than to answer incorrectly because you don't actually understand what's asked. It's okay. They do understand that you might be nervous. So just make sure things are clear and always be respectful and courteous. If you've been treated poorly at a consulate or embassy, let us know. We can provide you with information about how to report that. But from your end, even if you're frustrated or angry, do be respectful and courteous and make sure that you're always presenting your best self, even if you're under stress. For the most part, people have good experiences, but occasionally things can get stressful. So eventually, success. Hopefully you will receive your visa. You'll check your embassy website for instructions for passport pickup or delivery, and you'll get something that looks like this. You should check it for accuracy. Check the spelling of your name, check the visa type, that is F1 or J1, that you got given the right type of visa. Make sure that's your photograph on the visa. Sometimes mix-ups happen and it's best to correct it immediately. Correcting it later can really be a problem. So as soon as you get it, make sure everything's right. And then we do get questions about security checks. So some of you will be selected for what's called administrative processing. Basically, this is a delay in visa processing. If you have concerns about delayed arrival because of administrative processing, check in with us and let us know. We'll want any documentation that you received about the administrative processing. The average processing can be 60 to 90 days. Sometimes it's a couple weeks. Sometimes it can take as long as 6 months. Unfortunately, there is nothing you can do if you receive administrative processing. You just have to wait out the process. You might provide additional evidence from your department that indicates that you're expected on campus on a particular date. Sometimes if you get a security clearance, they might ask you for additional information. Provide that as soon as possible. Check with us about your response and make sure that you have everything you need. But do contact us if you have an administrative processing and you are facing concerns of arrival on time. And then the worst case, so you have to be prepared. It doesn't happen that often, but sometimes it does. If you get a denial, first, take a deep breath, don't panic. Ask for the reason of the denial in writing. The State Department is required to give you notification of a denial in writing, and it will have a very specific reason. Make detailed notes about the interview, the officer's name, the questions that are asked, what you answered. This may be critical for us to understand to help you overcome the denial. Then immediately email internationaloffice@berkeley.edu and tell us the details, including the location of the consulate and the date and time of your interview and anything that you remember being asked and how you answered. After you consult with us, the only way to overcome a denial is to reapply with additional information that addresses the denial reason. We'll take the information you gave us and try to give you our best advice on what you might need to overcome the denial. Often there's some clues in what they may have asked you and things that they were interested in during the interview. Okay, and finally, some of you may be coming with family. There are F2 or J2 dependent visas available for children under 21, legally married spouses. So domestic partnerships, unfortunately, don't qualify. You have to be legally married either in your country or a different country. As long as you're legally married somewhere in the world, the US government will allow you to apply for an F2 or J2 for a spouse. They can apply with the F1 or J1 or independently. And basically they will need their own DS 2019 or I-20 and copies of all of the F1's documents, their funding, proof of admission, all the stuff the F1 needed, the F2 will need. All the stuff the J2 needed, the J1 needed, the J2 will need. And we have more information on our website about inviting family. Okay. So I'm going to pause here and take a look and see if we have any questions that need to be answered. Let's see. Anna, I see that you were answering questions.
Yeah, I think there's one question that could be helpful for others in the chat. There's a student asking, they're Canadian, but this could apply to anyone. They're wanting to come to the US for travel before they get their I-20 and come in on their F1. Is that possible? And then can they automatically transfer over to F1?
Yeah, there's no automatic anything. Yeah, so this is a bit of a weird question. So if you're someone who's thinking about this, I would say check in with us individually so we can take a look at your information to see about your travel plans. For Canadians, this might be a little simpler. So my Canadian friends, crossing the border is simpler for you. What I can say is you can only enter as a student within 30 days of the start of your I-20 or DS 2019. So if you're traveling before that period, you'd need to enter under your normal tourist category. You cannot study while you're here, and then you need to leave and then come back within that 30-day entry window using your student status. And the same would go for anyone. Occasionally we have people, I think it's kind of risky and weird just because timing can be kind of tricky. But theoretically, if you enter on a different visa status, you can do that if you qualify for the visa status, but then you're going to need to leave and re-enter again using your student visa documents within the 30-day entry window before your I-20 or DS 2019 begins. So, you know, it's possible to do that, but you just need to pay attention to the timing and make sure that you're doing everything within a timeline that makes sense for you. And keeping in mind that if you're entering the US in a visa category that doesn't allow study, like tourist, that includes Canadians who are entering under the visa waiver, you can't study and you have to leave and come back before you can begin your studies and begin working on campus if you have a campus job.
Great. That's very helpful, Erin. There's a couple questions about administrative processing. Do you have any tips or estimates for how long it takes, or kind of just a summary of the process for those who might be going through this?
Yeah, let me go back to those slides. So we don't have any tips. The only tips I can have is take deep breaths and be patient. Unfortunately, it's kind of random, but sometimes it's not. We see this more commonly for students in STEM fields and from certain countries. We've seen more for students from China. Students from Iran also tend to frequently see administrative processing. Sometimes we see administrative processing when consulates are just backed up. And it's sort of, unfortunately, a way that they can slow processing down so they can catch up. Sometimes people get it when their name is a really common name and similar to a lot of other people's names. The issue with this is you just don't know how long it's going to take. When you get a ding with administrative processing, you may get information about how long it's expected to take, but it could be really generic. I'd say we see things taking anywhere from a couple weeks to maybe 60 to 90 days. Some of the longer processing, like some of our Iranians and folks that were in like really sensitive fields like nuclear engineering, those can take as long as 6 months. In that case, we just try to work with you and work with you academically to see what we can do. The main issue is if you withdraw from the university while it's pending, we have to cancel your I-20 and that's going to stop the visa. So if you're not able to arrive on time for fall, you need to work with us and your academic department to determine some options for you, whether that's late arrival or deferral, and we can work with you to keep your visa record active while that's still processing. There isn't really anything you can do to speed it up. Part of what's often happening is it's not just the embassy. Other government agencies are involved that are doing security checks on your application, and they have to wait for these clearances to come through. And some of them are faster or slower than others. Sometimes it's about sensitive technology. If it's a name check, those can really take a long time, and you just don't know what kind you've gotten. So it's really hard to say how long it'll take. You know, one thing you can do is get a letter from your department that stresses your timely arrival to the university, that indicates any kind of negative academic or financial impacts to your late arrival. And you could try to also submit that with your application. But the truth is, generally, nothing's going to move that application any faster. They just take the length of time that they take. So what you'll need to do for now is just be patient. Make sure that your plane ticket is flexible, that you can adjust that plane ticket or cancel it and rebook if you need to, and be in touch with your academic department and get an academic backup plan. Like what is your plan if you can't arrive on time, and then check in with our office and we'll see what we'll need to do with you in terms of making document adjustments. We're not making any adjustments right now. Generally, we're going to want to see how it plays out. And once we get to the start of the semester, we'll see if we need to make an adjustment. If you defer to a future semester, like if you just say, I'm not coming for fall, I'm approved to defer my admissions to spring, then we'll adjust your documents, because that's more of you've officially been deferred. But that's all stuff you'd have to work out with your academic department.
Great. And then one other question. Do you have any advice for students who are trying to get an expedited visa appointment?
Yeah, I don't have much to that either, because each consulate and embassy seems to have their own procedures. So you just want to follow the instructions in those procedures. So generally, you're going to look on the website and look for either expedited or emergency visas. Generally, they're not going to allow you to request an expedite unless you're within 30 days of your start date. You're getting close to that. We're almost there. The start of most people's documents is actually August 17th. So you're about to be in range for that. That's the start of the semester, but instruction doesn't actually start until August 24th. But the start of the semester is officially August 17th. So I would recommend that you look at your consulate or embassy website and see. What will not help you is emailing us and asking us if we can expedite it, because we may be UC Berkeley, but we don't have that level of power at hundreds and hundreds of embassies around the world. And you are in a pile with lots and lots of other people applying. So you have to go through the official procedures.
Great. I think that's good for now.
Okay. Well, I can take a look. I see we've got some other questions. Okay. All right. Well, I'll keep going and then we can loop back around and try to get to any of these unanswered questions. Okay. But I want to get through the arrival information and then we can finish the Q&A. So, all right. So arriving in the US. So if you're a new student, you can enter the US up to 30 days before the program start date on your I-20 or DS 2019. So on the left, you see the I-20, it says F1. and you have program start and end dates. And then there's actually an earliest admission date that's listed on the I-20. That's the earliest date that you can enter the US. Please do not enter earlier than this date. If you do, you're violating your visa status, even if they let you in. So pay attention to that. DS 2019, it's not noted on your DS 2019, but you just need to calculate 30 days before the start of the DS 2019. If you're a student who transferred your I-20, you were already studying in the US and you transferred your I-20 and you transferred your SEVIS ID to Berkeley, you're not subject to that 30-day limit. You're free to travel because you actually have a continuing record. We recommend entering at least 1 week before your classes begin. Generally, it's good to arrive early because it can take a while to get set up here. And you may have a lot of pre-arrival or orientation events going on. But we don't recommend entering a lot later than that because it can be hard getting started. And again, if you're going to enter after the start of classes, you really need to check with your academic department and you need to check with our office. So preparing for your arrival. All right, and hopefully my Canadian friends, you've come back now because we're talking about arrival, your I-20 DS 2019 arrival dates, and then preparing. So carry all your required documents with you, not in your checked bag. So don't put it in your suitcase, put it in the bag that you're carrying on the airplane with you. If possible, we recommend that you arrive during our office hours, Monday to Friday from 10 to 12 or 1 to 4. That way, if you have a problem during arrival, you can request that immigration calls our office. Now, I know that not every flight is coming in at that time. I would recommend that you come in through San Francisco. The San Francisco Port of Entry deals with lots of students. They're generally very understanding and they generally always contact our office if they have a problem. And we tend to find that students have good experiences going through San Francisco. So if that's your port of entry, I'd recommend it. Don't bring any restricted items. There's rules about travel with medication, with food, and with pets. So pay attention to the rules about that and make sure that you're following the guidelines on each of those things. Additionally, something we'll talk about after you're here and something I'm going to tell you before you get here. Medical and recreational marijuana is illegal under US federal law. Possession of that or use can result in deportation. So be aware of that, that even if something is legal back home, you shouldn't be crossing the border with controlled substances. Additionally, you don't want to be advertising that you are a user of federally illegal substances. We've definitely had students removed from the port of entry and sent back home because of evidence that they were either in possession of or were regular users of federally illegal substances. Be aware that Customs and Border Protection is allowed to inspect your electronic devices, and you can prepare your device for travel, but they are allowed to ask you for your cell phone or your laptop and to look at it. If you say no, technically it's a reason they can deny you entry. If you say yes, then they have access to your information and you probably want to feel okay about what they're looking at. Required arrival documentation. So it's not common for devices to get inspected, but it might happen. But what you always need is your passport. It should be valid for at least 6 months into the future. And you should have a valid non-immigrant visa, F1 or J1, unless you're Canadian. If you're Canadian, there's no visa stamp in your passport. That's the only thing that's different for you as a Canadian. You want your Form I-20 or DS 2019. If you received your I-20 electronically by email, you need to print it out and sign it with your human hand, and then carry the physically printed out and signed I-20 across the border. Don't just show them your phone with a copy of the I-20. That's not valid. DS 2019, you will receive a physical copy of the DS 2019 from us by mail. Evidence of your financial resources, proof of your UC Berkeley admission, or if you're a continuing student, proof of your enrollment, proof of your SEVIS fee payment, and then any current vaccination or testing requirements. Currently, there's no testing requirement for entry. It could change, so pay attention at the time you're traveling, but there are vaccination requirements. Additionally, officers can ask you about your reasons for entering the US, where you're traveling, or about your academic program. A lot of you are on really long flights, so do what you need to do to wake up when you get off the plane. Jump up and down, shake your head, get a drink of water. Try to be as awake as you can be, because they're going to ask you questions. And you might be pretty tired, so just be prepared to answer questions about what you're doing. We've definitely had students who sort of forgot what they're doing at the border and can't remember why they're here. Try to be a little more awake at the time that you're arriving. If you encounter problems at entry, please contact us as soon as possible, and we'll see what we can do to help you. And here's our contact information. General information is on our website, internationaloffice.berkeley.edu, and general questions, email internationaloffice@berkeley.edu, or NIF for NIF specific questions at nif@berkeley.edu. Keep in mind, we have a 3 business day response time for emails, especially right now when it's really busy. Lots of students are emailing. We do have a phone line, but it's generally better to get through if you want to talk to an advisor by coming to our virtual drop-in advisors, advising hours. And you can find that by looking on our student services page. We have virtual advising Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. No advising on Wednesday. So if you come to virtual drop-ins, you can see an advisor same day. If you call on the phone, you'll generally get referred to someone, but often the phone lines are busy. And we're generally busy in Zoom doing virtual advising. So it's better to do that. Or if you have a question that can wait a little, a day or 2, a day or 3, just email us and we'll get back to you. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. So I'm going to go back and take a look at the chat questions. So Anna, do you want me to just kind of go through and answer questions in the order that they came, or do you want to give me questions?
Yeah, I'd say from the point where I stopped responding, you can just go through in order.
Okay, let's see. Let me find that. Do you have a timestamp for that?
Yeah, 4:10 should start with Nora.
Okay, Nora, where's Nora? Okay, got it. All right, so question. Which documents from the application process will we need to bring with us to the US, including vaccination and or I-20? Well, we did get to that, but I'll bring this back here. So passport, you need your I-20 or DS 2019, proof of your financial resources, proof of your admission or proof of your enrollment, proof of your CVIS fee payment, and then vaccination or testing requirements. And for that, you'd want to click the link and see what the current requirements are for that, because vaccination and testing could change over time. Right now, there's no testing, but there is vaccination. But again, that could change. For issues getting some vaccinations in our home countries, can we take it for granted that we can get any outstanding in the US prior to the start of the semester? I'm not sure how to answer that. So the Tang Center and UHS does offer all types of vaccinations, but you will have to have general vaccination like for COVID in order to enter the US unless you meet some really narrow exception categories. We have information on our website. Anna, can you pop the COVID-19 website link into the chat? And I'm going to edit the PowerPoint. I thought I'd added it in there, but I don't see it, but I'll add it in there. We have links on our COVID-19 FAQ that will take you to information about vaccination requirements for entry to the US. If you're talking about general vaccinations like tuberculosis and that kind of stuff for the university, you may be able to get that on arrival, and you'd have to check with UHS Tang, the health center, to see when you have to get that done and what the availability is to get those vaccinations taken care of. Okay, next. I'm an incoming transfer student and I'm on an expired visa from my last school. After receiving my UC Berkeley I-20, do you think I need to go back home and get a new visa, or am I okay to stay with a valid UC Berkeley I-20? Great question. So if you are a transfer student and you transferred your I-20 to Berkeley with the same SEVIS ID, and you're still physically present in the US, your body is still here and you're not leaving, you're fine. If your visa expires while your body is in the US and your I-20 is valid, you have an active I-20 and it's continuing into the future, you're fine to stay in the US. The visa is just an entry document to cross the border. You only need a valid visa to enter the US. Once you're here, the visa doesn't matter, but your I-20 is really important in whether you're going to be a student. So if you're a transfer and you're here and your visa's expired, but your I-20 is still valid from UC Berkeley, you're fine. The next time you leave the US, you do need to apply for a new visa so you can cross the border and re-enter again to continue your studies. In case I can't get my F1 visa in time, can I study under my current F2 visa? That's a tricky question. F2s are not allowed to study full time. So if you are currently an F2, I don't know if that's the best option for you. I would advise you to come and talk to us in advising to talk about a strategy because F2s can't study full time and it could be problematic for you to enter as an F2 and then you can only study part-time, which is likely not going to be academically okay. So I would check in with us about your plans to see what might be a good strategy for you. Okay, next, my country has a long wait list for visa appointments, so I don't want to risk delaying my classes by going back home during this period. Oh, I think this was my transfer student. So transfer student, you were okay with your visa. So it looks like, all right, is it normal that the officer puts your application under administrative processing, but still returns the passport and other documents to you? Yeah, that happens. Generally, once you're done with the administrative processing, they will ask you to send the passport and documents back, and then they'll put the visa in your passport. Each embassy and consulate does it differently. Some consulates, they'll keep your passport, but you know, the problem is, if they keep your passport for a really long time, you can't travel anywhere. So it's usually good that they sent it back to you so that you're not trapped because your passport is being held by the consulate. Okay. Hello, is a visa only need for US entry/re-entry? I received a visa for 3 months as a Syrian, and I'm not sure if I need to renew it while being physically present in the US. Yeah, every country is different and some countries get really short visas. So, you know, this is a good question. So again, how the visa works is it's like, one way we describe it is it's like the key to get in your house. You need the key to unlock the door to your house, but once you enter your house, you don't need the key anymore. And it's okay if it's in your pocket. So that's the same with the visa. So if you've got a valid I-20, let's say your I-20 is valid for 5 years, you're in a 5-year program of study, you're enrolled full-time, you're actively maintaining your F1 status. Once you cross the border and your body is in the US and you've entered properly in your F1 status, it's fine for you to stay in the US, even if the visa. So let's go back a little bit and remind you, that's an I-20, that's got to start and end date. That's a DS 2019, that's got to start and end date. But the visa, that's just a sticker in your passport. That's just for entry. It doesn't matter if it expires while you're in the US, at least while you're on an F1 or J1 visa. Other visa categories might be different, but the F1 or J1 visa, it doesn't matter if it expires while you're in the US, as long as your other documents are valid and you're still properly maintaining status by being enrolled full-time and being a full-time student. Okay, well, it looks like I've managed to get to the end of the current list of questions. Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay. So my country has a very long list for appointments. I think current date for appointments, if you check, is May 2023.
Okay.
So yeah, it's really far. But then I've been able to get a date of August 30th.
Okay.
So I do not know if I can get like an extension from UC Berkeley to start my classes a bit late because of the late appointment.
Yeah, so you're going to need to contact your academic department to determine if that's possible, because we can't give you, our office, we just deal with visa and immigration stuff, but we can't give you the permission to start your classes late, especially if they're in-person classes. So you may need to, if you're an undergrad, you may need to contact your academic advisor, like your college advisor, and let them know what's going on and get some advice. If you're a graduate student, you'd want to contact your graduate department and notify them of your late arrival and confirm that it's okay for that late arrival. Generally, we don't have an issue with the late arrival for you as long as academically it's okay. However, if you're arriving really late, usually a week, like 2 weeks after the start of the semester, we may need to adjust your DS 2019 or F1 I-20 start date. But it kind of depends on your arrival date. So first, contact your academics, confirm your academic plan, then contact our office and we'll determine if we need to make any adjustments to your I-20 or DS 2019.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. And I know a lot of people are in that situation. I mean, we keep hoping that visas will get a little bit better every year, but it's still been pretty backed up around the world, but not as bad as the previous years. So, you know, believe it or not, it's better than it has been. Yeah, anybody else? Okay, oh yeah, question. Is it necessary to enroll for courses before entering the US? No, if it's possible, then, you know, get enrolled. That's definitely better. But for new students, I know your enrollment windows open kind of late, or you may be working with your department to get enrolled. You'll need proof of your admission if you're new, so that shows you're admitted for the fall. If it's possible to get enrolled, I'd encourage you to go ahead and get enrolled, and you can have proof of your enrollment as well. But for new students, you know, it's understood that you may be working on your enrollment after your arrival. If you're a continuing student, meaning, you know, you were a student who's been an enrolled student and has a history of being enrolled, yes, you should be enrolled for fall already. And if you're not, get enrolled. Otherwise, you don't have proof that you're a continuing student. Any other questions? Should tuition and fees be paid before entering? The answer to that is, I can't give you the specific answer. For visa purposes, no, that's not required. However, you need to look at the due date for your tuition and fees to be paid, and you should be paying tuition and fees by the due date. And if you're entering, you know, after the due date, then yes, you should pay your tuition and fees. But for visa purposes, no, that's not a requirement. They won't require that you show proof that you've already paid. Okay. Let's see, another question. Okay. Somebody from Italy's interview was waived. Do you have any suggestions about processing times? Because I don't have any updates from the consulate since the beginning of July. Thanks again. Yeah, I mean, every consulate operates differently. One place that you can look just to see what general processing times would be if you were getting an appointment is, I'll put it in here, travel.state.gov. If you go to the visa page, it'll show you processing times for different embassies. You can find your visa category and then input the consulate or embassy you're going to. But you'd have to check individually with each consulate because it's just different everywhere. What we're finding is students are excited about getting their interviews waived, but then they're disappointed to find that processing still takes time, and it just seems to be different at every consulate. What would be an example of proof of admission? The acceptance letter. Yeah, so your acceptance letter from UC Berkeley that says, hey, you are accepted to UC Berkeley for fall 2022. Congratulations. Okay, so any other questions? All right, well, I think we may finish up because we've run out of questions. But if anybody has any further questions, or you're brushing your teeth tonight and something strikes you, just don't forget that you can always contact us. I'm going to go back to the contact us page, and here's all of our contact information. General questions, international office at berkeley.edu, or NIF at berkeley.edu if you're still waiting on your I-20 or DS 2019 and you have a question about that NIF, or you can drop in and see us and advising, although I know drop-ins are a little tricky because it might be the middle of the night for you, so email might be better if you're still kind of traveling here. But if there's no further questions, then I look forward to welcoming all of you in August. Hopefully we can see you at orientation, and yeah, we're here to help if you need anything. So take care, everybody. And if you're up late, I hope you can get some rest. If you're up early, I wish you a good day.